Sir.
You allow another moment when Miss Love calls me that I did not do something. They have the exact image of what we got from the jail in Fayette County. That is it. And if I get another false allegation and you do nothing, I'm shocked. I'm appalled at you. I sit here day after day with this false allegation just machine. I gave the state everything. There's been no disconstruction. There's been no purposeful, I don't care. I don't care. I give over everything. I've done this for 33 years. Never in my life have I seen a trial. I've done 300 appeals in the state of Georgia alone. I've never read a case like this. Judge, I gave them everything I had. I waited, I was at my office till 8, after 8 last night. I waited for their investigator to come by. I handed him an exact copy of thumb drive. Been no deconstruction. There's been no purposeful exclusion. This is not the first time.
Okay.
And I apologize that I'm getting tempered, but I've never been treated like this. You talk about professionalism every week. Professionalism is lacking with one lawyer here. It has never been. I don't even like coming to court. I used to love this. I would die for what we do. I used to say, I'm dying. I would die. I couldn't choose a better profession. If I had litigated with Miss Love, I would.
Your Honor, could we strike the ad hominem attack?
No, I'm speaking.
Really, could we strike that?
Okay, hey, everybody, calm down. Everybody, both of you, please be seated.
Judge, I'm not
Both
done.
of you.
Disclaimer. The content in this video is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. Our goal is to report on public conversations, provide context, and, where applicable, clarify misinformation and debunk false claims. We strive for ethical and responsible reporting by presenting a balanced perspective, verifying information wherever possible, and citing all relevant sources, including articles, tweets, TikToks, and other online media. In a federal courtroom pulsing with tension and guarded by the unblinking eyes of justice, the name Sean Diddy Combs echoed with a gravity never before associated with the man known for music, moguldom, and the myth of untouchable fame. Once a symbol of entrepreneurial ascent and hip-hop royalty, Diddy now sat stoically in the defendant's chair, no longer the orchestrator of spectacle, but the central figure in one. Across the marble walls and polished wooden floors, the air buzzed with a mixture of disbelief, anticipation, and the kind of dread that only accumulates when decades
would come in and say, that juror was crying. It was not true. You would say, that's not my recollection after I said it. You did nothing. We start the case.
But Mr. Steele.
I asked you, please.
Mr. Steele.
Please, Judge. How would you feel if you were being treated like
Mr. Steele.
this?
Mr.
Well,
Steele.
I'd like to finish.
Mr. Steele.
I gave them everything on that drive, and it's continual abuse of a prosecutor, of another member of the bar. I don't talk with Miss Love, and that's fine. I like that. But Judge, I'm not going to stand here anymore. I don't care. You can take my bar card.
Mr. Steele, listen.
Wrong, though.
But they're...
And Mr. Williams, to me, this is an innocent man. You talk about, Miss Love said there's a man in the Fulton County Jail who shouldn't be there, Mr. Copeland. Mr.
of
Williams
secrets
shouldn't be in
claw
custody.
their way into the light. This was not a concert. It was a reckoning. From the first moment, courtroom observers sensed this trial would not proceed like any other. Prosecutors stepped forward, their tone sharp, their intent surgical, laying out a portrait of Sean Combs not as a celebrity or philanthropist, but as an architect of fear, control, and exploitation. Their case: racketeering, sex trafficking by force, conspiracy, and the transportation of individuals for prostitution. The details were not merely salacious, they were harrowing. The accusations spanned decades.
To the Diddy trial now, the forensic psychologist Dawn Hughes was on the stand earlier today, day 7. She was brought in by prosecutors to break down why victims of domestic abuse stay in relationships in many cases, how they cope, why it takes leaving the relationship for some victims to then open up about the abuse they were experiencing.
And painted a disturbing portrait of systematic abuse masked by glitter and power. It began with a single woman's voice, Cassie Ventura. A former pop singer, once Diddy's protege and partner, she had long been seen as a mere footnote in his glamorous narrative. But on this day, her name was etched into the legal records not as a starlet, but as the central survivor. Her testimony opened a floodgate. She spoke of coercion, emotional manipulation, drug use, and the physical violence she endured.
Andrew, taking up most of today's testimony was Dr. Dawn Hughes. She's a board-certified clinical and forensic psychologist, and she testified on why people stay in abusive relationships. She testified in other high-profile cases like the defamation trial with Amber Heard and Johnny Depp, singer R. Kelly, and NXIVM founder Keith Raniere. She dug into four main topics: why people stay in these types of relationships, how they cope, and how and when they reveal what happened to them, and memory. She explained that abusive relationships do have love, and trauma bonding can make it harder to leave, and taking illegal substances can numb.
She told the court that her reality was a gilded cage, that behind the mansions and red carpets, she lived in fear, controlled through addiction, isolation, and the threat of humiliation. Cassie's mother, Regina, added another layer. In short, direct testimony, she confirmed years of quiet dread. She described bruises, whispered threats, and moments of financial desperation so acute that she and her husband took out a home equity loan, fearing retaliation if they did not comply with Diddy's demands. She read aloud an email Cassie had sent her in December of 2011, trembling as she recited words no mother.
How did you find out about any of that?
Well, I'm disturbed too.
You got 5 minutes.
Well, I don't need it. I want to continue.
Mr. Steele, I am going to hold you still hold you in summary criminal contempt.
This is actually turned into a pretty central part of the prosecution's case. So the allegations that make the drug use particularly relevant are that this is one way that Combs exerted control over both Cassie Ventura and potentially other victims as well. We haven't heard from them yet. But part of the way that he was able to make Cassie compliant during these freak-offs, we learned this from her testimony, is through the use of drugs. So Cassie testified that for many of the freak-offs, she was high. She was given a number of different narcotics. We had other witnesses that came in and testified about seeing her, laying on a bed, appearing to be under the influence of some sort of drugs. So this was what we're seeing now is a pattern of Combs being able to, in some instances, control her through many different ways, but one of the central ways that we've heard testimony about is through these drugs.
In the message, Cassie described how Diddy had threatened to release 2 explicit tapes of her on Christmas Day and shortly after, and had even implied he'd have someone hurt her and her then-boyfriend, rapper Kid Cudi. That threat, prosecutors argued, was not empty. As evidence, they introduced testimony and documentation that suggested Diddy had in fact firebombed Kid Cudi's car in retaliation. Cudi, set to testify later in the trial, loomed over the proceedings as a symbolic ghost of what had happened and what could still unfold. Then came the images, photographs taken during a federal raid on Diddy's Miami mansion in March 2024. They were not just photographs, they were revelations. Agents found adult toys, high heels, prescription pills, marijuana, firearms, including AR-15s with defaced serial numbers, and a small locked container bearing Diddy's
Shray
name.
Hayes. In his line of work, he went by the name The Punisher. He laid out what he said happened during freak-offs he was allegedly hired to be part of. He claimed that Combs entered the room in an instance only wearing what seemed like a Muslim hijab, carrying Astroglide. The Punisher said he noticed it because of the purple cap, which we do see in the government evidence photos, and he explained that it was sexual lubricant. He also said he had no communication with Combs during the as he wore allegedly that veil over his face and nothing more. The government is also submitting several images that show drugs that were seized from the house in Miami. Here's a picture of some of that evidence laying on top of a Gucci designer bag. This is a picture of a Ziploc bag that has several different kinds of pills. Some of them are pink, white, blue. There's also a rolled up $100 bill right next to that bag. In another plastic bag, there are more pills. These seem to be 2 separate kinds as well. Some are white, some are yellow. Then there are orange and pink pills you see here that, according to the Homeland Security Special Agent who is testifying today, that's the party drug MDMA MDMA. It's similar to ecstasy. This is according to the Homeland Security Special Agent who testified today about what they saw in Miami during this raid. Now, we don't get descriptions in the evidence drops to tell you exactly what these pills are, but when it comes to drugs, Combs's former assistant, David James, testified this week that Diddy allegedly took drugs every day when he worked for him. Specifically, throughout the day,
in bold
he would take
white
Percocets
letters,
and then switch
a rolled
to
up
ecstasy.
$100 bill lay next to a packet of white powder labeled DBL wash, believed to be cocaine. According to Homeland Security agents, this was not just the remnants of a party, it was the residue of control. The prosecution called witnesses who formed the backbone of Diddy's empire.
We have some eminent attorneys joining us who disagree about what's going to happen here. And I guess it's going to come down to what a jury thinks of how much of this was consensual or how much was non-consensual or indeed stroke coercive. And a lot of may rest, of course, on Cassie Ventura's testimony. How do you think she did? Obviously, she's heavily pregnant, which must have made it a very difficult experience for her. But how much of her testimony do you think, if you're a juror listening to all this?
Well, you know, one of the things I want to point out is none of us, maybe your commentators were, but I certainly wasn't in the courtroom to hear what she had to say. You know, this is a situation in the federal court where they do not allow cameras, so we can't see her testimony and see her body language and hear her tone of voice and that sort of thing. So what we have is commentators who seize on certain things she said, certain things she fails to say, and then try to make a mountain out of it. Let's remember that in a lawsuit, you know, you don't win a case based on one witness or one piece of evidence. Typically, you're building a wall, and one of the things they teach you in law school is a brick is not a wall. Cassie Ventura's testimony is one brick in what I expect to be a very long trial with a lot of bricks attempting to build a wall.
We have a brand new evidence drop from the government as they make their case in the sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs. These are new pictures from inside Combs's Miami mansion from when it was raided by federal agents in March 2024. From risque adult toys and high heels to guns, ammo,
Hire, former assistants, bodyguards, managers. Each one added a new brick to the wall of evidence. One former assistant, George Kaplan, described his duties, which included preparing Diddy's hotel rooms with baby oil, Astroglide, and liquor, all paid for on corporate cards. Another testified that Diddy took Percocet during the day and switched to ecstasy at night, a routine so well known it became a running joke among his staff. David James, a former personal aide, said he was sent to pick up drugs for Diddy multiple times and was paid in cash to do so. Perhaps the most explosive witness was Shray the Punisher Hayes, a male escort who claimed he was flown in for what the inner circle called freak-offs, code for private, drug-fueled sex parties allegedly hosted and orchestrated by Diddy. Hayes described seeing Diddy enter a room in nothing but a Muslim hijab, holding a bottle of lubricant. He said no words were exchanged. Everything was silent, controlled, expected. Even more damning were the pills photographed during the Miami raid. Pink, yellow, white, blue, various shapes and sizes, and stacked in Ziploc bags next to Gucci bags and luxury luggage. The DEA confirmed some were MDMA. Several others are still being tested.
Have some new pictures of Ventura. This is one of her with Don Richard, who's the former Danity Kane member who testified this week that she had witnessed Combs assault Cassie multiple times. In this picture, you see Cassie on the right. Richard testified that Cassie wore glasses to hide the swelling after Combs allegedly hit her in the face. This was in New York in 2009. Other pictures show some of the injuries that the government alleges Cassie suffered at the hands of the now disgraced music mogul. We are blurring the bruises in these pictures. These are sensitive images about a sensitive topic, and also because of the rules of YouTube. Now we see in this image here, there is a bruise on Cassie's leg. We have another picture where there's a small bruise on her shoulder. This is a picture that shows Ventura with a dark bruise that's below her waistline. All of these have been already presented to the jury.
Don Hughes, a clinical and forensic psychologist, was brought in by the prosecution to explain the psychological trap victims often find themselves in. She described trauma bonding, learned helplessness, and the numbness that can follow years of abuse. Hughes explained that many victims do not flee abusive relationships immediately, not because they consent, but because they are systematically broken down. Her testimony, calm and clinical, drove home a brutal truth. Consent can be manufactured under duress. Love can be weaponized. Silence can be taught. In this trial, silence was both a theme and a weapon. Observers noted the eerie stillness with which Diddy watched the proceedings, occasionally glancing to his attorneys. The defense argued that Cassie was a willing participant, citing old text messages and social media posts. They insisted that the narrative was being twisted, but when the prosecution redirected...
There is this picture. It's a small alleged container of cocaine. The government found it with a rolled up dollar bill next to it. That cocaine has a label on it that says DBL Wash. Agents also found this green locked heavy duty container. It says Diddy right across the front. And then this picture shows what it appears they found inside, which includes 2 large bags of marijuana. Along with the bags of drugs and the adult toys that agents found during this raid, they also found several weapons inside the home. There's also a magazine and bullets that appear to go with that style of firearm. Then there are pieces to AR-15 rifles like this. The government says the serial numbers on those guns, this one with a skull and crossbones on it, have been defaced. Then there's another AR-15, that one has a biohazard logo on it. That also has a defaced serial number according to...
They posed a simple, devastating question. Can you truly consent when fear is the foundation of the relationship? Then came the moment that unraveled the defense's image of composure. Lead attorney Brian Steele lost control during a heated exchange over discovery materials. His voice raised, his face flushed. He accused the prosecution of misconduct. The judge interrupted. "This is a court of law, not a stage," he snapped. The jury watched in silence as Steele's argument descended into a tirade. "Take my bar card," he shouted at one point. "I don't care." The courtroom was stunned. Judge Aaron Subramanian found him in contempt of court. For a federal trial, this was unprecedented. The message was clear. No one, not even the defense team of a global superstar, was above the rules. Professionalism matters. Decorum matters. Truth matters. But even amid the chaos of courtroom drama, the heart of the case remained the testimonies of those who lived through it. Former Danity Kane singer Dawn Richard testified that she saw Cassie wearing sunglasses to hide swelling after an alleged assault in New York. Pictures were introduced into evidence. Cassie with bruises on her thigh, shoulder, and hip. Her mother testified she took those pictures. "We had to memorialize it," she said quietly. And then there was the mirror, found in...
Former assistants, former musicians, everyone within the Diddy orbit, all have testified they witnessed violence, they saw it on multiple occasions, and yet they did nothing. And this spans years, right? Cassie is with him, but all of these people, these bystanders, are watching it happen, seeing it occur, and still either continue to do business with Diddy or stay in his...
Inside Diddy's home. On it, written in what appeared to be lipstick or marker, were the words, "What do you want?" followed by, "Love you, love Diddy," and "You are legend and breathe." Legal analysts called it chilling, a psychological artifact of manipulation, guilt, and emotional captivity. Despite the gravity of the charges, Diddy pleaded not guilty. His lawyers insisted the allegations were exaggerated, misrepresented, or flat-out lies. They painted their client as a flawed but innocent man, a victim of a cultural witch hunt targeting powerful black figures in the entertainment industry. But for every argument made by the defense, another witness emerged. Another voice. Another detail that tore at the fabric of his carefully curated image. Media outlets worldwide dissected every minute of the trial. Court TV, CNN Legal, and the New York Times published extensive coverage. The public opinion splintered. Some saw a man being tried by media. Others saw a predator finally being held accountable. Hashtags like #Diddy Trial and #Justice for Cassie flooded Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. And the case is far from over. Tomorrow, rapper Kid Cudi is expected to take the stand. His testimony could confirm whether Diddy orchestrated a firebombing in response to jealousy. Legal experts say that if true, it could shift the case from trafficking and abuse to attempted homicide. Behind the scenes, rumors swirl that other high-profile entertainers and executives may be subpoenaed. Some fear this is only the beginning. And yet, despite everything, despite the scandal, the outrage, the heartbreak, one reality persists. This trial is not just about Sean Combs. It is about a system that enabled him, an industry that protected him, a culture that turned away. This is more than a courtroom battle. It's a cultural reckoning, a dismantling of celebrity immunity, a long overdue confrontation with power, privilege, and silence. This is the truth behind the fame.